Good evening, everyone, to our board meeting tonight. Could you all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Megan, will you call the roll?
Yes, Trustee Lautner.
Here.
Trustee Zara.
Here.
Here. Excuse me, Trustee Sheehan.
Here.
Trustee Stewart.
Here.
Trustee Caputo is absent. President DeCipio.
Present.
A quorum is present, Mr. President.
Thank you, Megan. We also have with us tonight Catherine Paget, who is the Grange Historical Society Director. Welcome, Kathy. We're going to have you speak in a couple of minutes. So we're going to get to that for the proclamation celebrating the 150th birthday of the Samuel Weil House. Proclamation in recognition and celebration of the 150th birthday of the Samuel Weil House located at 444 South LaGrange Road. Whereas the Samuel Weil House, built in 1874 by pioneer settler Samuel Weil, born July 21st, 1819, celebrates its 150th birthday in 2024. Whereas the Samuel Weil House is on proud display at the entrance of nearby LaGrange's historical district and is recognized as part of the National Register of Historical Places. Whereas it's the only local historic home open to the public and has been the home of the Grange Area Historical Society since 1984. Whereas the Samuel Weil House is both a local museum and a conservator of information and artifacts from the LaGrange and LaGrange Park areas, it is recognized as a facility for research, archives, collections, and preservation of local history. Whereas the home is a continual piece of history and serves as a setting for education and as a place that engages the community in history and heritage of the LaGrange and LaGrange Park areas. Whereas the Village of LaGrange Park joins the LaGrange Area Historical Society in recognizing the Samuel Weil House on its 150th birthday as a place where history will be preserved and shared for generations to come. Now therefore be it proclaimed that I do hereby proclaim Sunday, July 21st, 2024 as a day to recognize and celebrate the 150th birthday of the Samuel Weil House. I encourage the community to continue to support the Samuel Weil House and thank the LaGrange Area Historical Society, a volunteer, self-funded organization, for their hard work and dedication to the preservation and maintenance of this beautiful historical treasure. So with that, I will introduce Kathleen.
Thank you. Can I get a photo? Oh. Thank you.
I think you look pretty good.
I think so too.
Go ahead, all yours.
All right, thank you. Wow, this is a great honor. I can't tell you enough. I've seen many of you at our house on 47th and LaGrange Road and at other events and here at Village Hall, and I thank you all for the support and continued support and this great honor that you've given us. We value, we treasure our relationship with the community. It's really what makes us go round. We have a folder on every house in LaGrange Park. So if you want to come and investigate your home and see what's in there, look at the history, we continue to add to that. It's kind of interesting, along with the great history that we have as a community here. It's a unique history, and I think by being recognized in this way, what we're saying to everybody else is, we have a special story in LaGrange Park. We have a special thing to tell people about, and a special thing to let our not only our constituents and residents here, but the children here and the schools. They have a place where they can learn about the history of this community. So I thank you very much. We are going to celebrate this 150th birthday on July 21st. In the little museum park that's next to the house. Please come down. It's from 1 to 3. There'll be cake and ice cream and all kinds of birthday things to do. And we really want a big crowd out there to just enjoy it. Watch for big changes over there. We are going to make many improvements in the years to come, and we invite you all down. Come often. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Catherine. Catherine, did you want to introduce who's with you?
Oh, yes. We have Mara Devitt, she is our secretary, and Beth Augustine, our board member, and we have Sarah Parks, who is our executive director.
Welcome and thank you. And Catherine, I have to say for you, you are the beacon of light for our Historical Society, and we appreciate your endeavors to keep it going and keep it vibrant. You're doing a phenomenal job. Thank you. Okay, next up. Recognition of graduating youth commissioners, Connie Anagas and Evie Franz.
Good evening. Tonight we are celebrating 2 graduating seniors from the Village's Youth Commission. Established in 2002, the Youth Commission serves an important advisory role in reviewing and discussing the Village Board's monthly work session meeting agendas. We believe the youth of our village can offer unique perspectives and insights into the many issues and opportunities that the village encounters on a regular basis. I can tell you that this current commission has had some really exciting and engaging discussions recently on infrastructure and streetscape improvements, pedestrian and bicycle safety, and also economic development, as we saw Andy's Frozen Custard come into town, and also more recently Aldi. The Youth Commission is just really a terrific group of engaged and enthusiastic young people in LaGrange Park. So I want to thank our outgoing seniors for their many contributions while serving the village in this capacity, and I also want to share a little bit about their next steps. So first up, I have Connie Anagnos. Connie has served on the Youth Commission since 2020. She's a graduate of Lyons Township High School and will be attending Cornell University in New York for chemical engineering. Connie loves to travel, and she just got back from an extended family vacation in Greece and Cyprus, and will soon be traveling to Japan and South Korea. She's looking forward to spending the rest of her summer volunteering at the LaGrange Hospital, sewing clothes and fostering cats, and she's very excited to attend Cornell starting this fall. Next, Evie Franz. Evie has served on the Youth Commission since 2023 and is also a graduate of Lyons Township. Evie will be attending the University of Dayton in Dayton, Ohio, and has declared a major in communications. However, she does plan to add an additional major in marketing to graduate with a double major in marketing and communications. Evie is spending her summer nannying during the week, and she will also be attending her yearly service trip in late July to the Appalachia Service Project. Every summer, the group travels to the Appalachian Mountains, and they perform repairs on houses for less fortunate families. Evie is very excited for what the future holds and can't wait for these new adventures. So while our 2 graduating seniors couldn't be present with us at tonight's meeting, let's give them a hand in recognition for their service on the LaGrange Park Youth Commission.
Thank you, Maggie. Okay, moving on to public participation. Anyone care to address the board? Ms. Sauer, no? Consent agenda. Megan?
Thank you, Mr. President. The items on this evening's consent agenda are as follows. A, approval of minutes. 1, Village Board meeting, May 28th, 2024. 2, Village Board closed session meeting, May 28th, 2024. 3, Village Board work session meeting, June 11th, 2024. B, action, accounts payable and payroll summary, motion 1, to authorize the president and chairperson of the finance committee to sign the register for bills and authorize the treasurer and village clerk to sign checks in payment of operating bills and salaries as itemized in the check registers, and motion 2, to authorize the village treasurer and village clerk to sign checks in the payment of payroll and other bills that become due between this date and the next village board meeting, with subsequent approval of the payroll register and voucher register by the Board of Trustees at its next meeting.
Entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Megan, call the roll.
Trustee Lautner?
Yes.
Trustee Zara?
Yes.
Trustee Council?
Yes.
Trustee Sheehan?
Yes.
Trustee Stewart?
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously, Mr. President.
Thank you, Megan. We'll move on to village manager's report. Julia?
Thank you, Mr. President. I have 2 items to report on this evening. The first is regarding our local Jewel food store. We have confirmed with the Village Market, the owners of the Village Market property, that there is a signed lease for the Jewel, which is really great news. Thank you for that round of applause for Jewel. We love our Jewel. The second item is really to augment Trustee Stewart's report that's coming later on this evening, and that is regarding an update to the CRC. On July 9th is our next CRC meeting, which stands for the Commercial Revitalization Committee. At the meeting on July 9th, there will be a presentation by SPAN on the brand and identity plan. This really kicks off the whole process with an existing conditions assessment or audit. This is a really interesting presentation. I invite folks to attend that meeting. Also related to that, we have a community meeting set for July 18th. This is a community input meeting where we will be inviting members of the public, members of the business community, residents, all to come to the library on July 18th from 5 to 7 p.m. In order to provide their input on the community branding and identity, in order to garner and engage the community for their input as it relates to the final plan. And with that, that concludes my report, Mr. President.
Thank you, Julia. Before we move on, I'm going to introduce Franny. Franny's here. Would you please come up, Fran, and give your report? So Trustee Stewart, I'm going to move her up just so they can get the report done.
Where do I
So
point?
that would be
Oh, there we go.
3.
Let me get this back to the beginning. Good evening. Thank you, Mr. President. Good to see you all, trustees. I am Fran Rude. I'm a partner with SB Friedman Development Advisors. I'm here with my colleague, Tony Canepa, who's a senior associate with the firm. We were also assisted on this study by Kimley Horn Associates. Daniel Grove, who worked on this with us, was not able to attend tonight, but will be presenting the findings from their site assessment. So tonight we are talking through the findings of the overall retail feasibility assessment for 2 sites on North LaGrange Road. These are just at the northeast corner of 31st and LaGrange. We're going to talk through some site-specific factors. For those of you who were present when we talked about the Jewel outlots, the format is pretty similar to that presentation. We'll then talk about the retail market assessment, and then we take this a little bit further. We're actually going to present to you some redevelopment concepts for the sites and talk about high level the financial feasibility of those sites. So we'll take our time, try and give you enough information so that you kind of fully understand the context. But I do think we'll, just for the sake of time, try and hold the questions until the end unless you want to just interrupt us and clarify something. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Tony to get us started in talking through the site assessment. And you should click to the right.
Alrighty. Hi, everyone. Let's see if I can get this clicker to work. Alrighty. So I'll be talking about the site-specific drivers of retail development on the site, as well as some of the market considerations we took a look at. To get started, these are 2 individual sites, so we were tasked with looking at the potential for retail redevelopment on the sites individually, as well as together. The north site currently has a dry cleaners. It's about 2,300 square feet. It's about 0.52 acres. They're both about the same size, so combined about 1 acre, and 35 surface parking stalls on that north site. The south site is the 1,500 square foot Jiffy Lube with about 13 surface parking stalls and 3 service bays. Next site. So nearby to the site, one of the things retail developers will look at is kind of adjacencies, what's near the existing site. So to the north, there are multifamily apartments. To the south, there's the existing gas station and single-family homes to the east. Across the street to the west is the forest preserve. This is something that might challenge the suitability for certain retail developers, as they'll be looking kind of more for denser commercial areas or denser residential populations. But that being said, it is close to some residential areas and a bit of a commercial activity node there with the Matone and the brewery that is recently opened. The site is accessible and really visible from LaGrange Road, which is great. If you recall from our Jewel work, one of the issues with that site was kind of the lack of visibility and traffic counts. Here, we do have 2 full access driveways on both sites that provide access to LaGrange Road. Majority of that street frontage on LaGrange Road is curb cuts. There's 4 curb cuts along that section there. And combined, the site is over an acre. Based on conversations we had with brokers and with Kinley Horn when we were talking about site design, the viability of redevelopment on the site would really be enhanced if they were developed together. Individually, the 0.52 acre sites might be a little bit small. But that being said, they do have great access and also great traffic counts. Like I mentioned, that Jewel site just didn't have quite as strong as traffic counts. Here we're seeing about 2,400 vehicles per day along LaGrange Road. And it's pretty evenly trafficked in both directions. However, the northbound traffic is slightly more prominent in the morning than the southbound traffic. So as you're going north on LaGrange Road, it is just a little bit heavier in the morning, which might be supportive of certain retail uses as well. As we get into that, we'll talk about zoning a bit. These are zone C1 commercial, which does support a broad range of land uses. The flexible zoning here is really going to help kind of support the attractiveness to retailers. As you can see, kind of most typical retail uses are permitted here by right. A couple are special uses, and then the minimum parking requirements are going to vary by the land use. You'll kind of see that in the development concepts we look at later, that those are just conceptual, but the parking ratios do kind of just vary. Stormwater management. So as I'm sure you're aware, they'll have to manage stormwater on the site if they redevelop it. The site is the right size. I'm sorry. Let this go. Oh yeah, so the rate control requirements are related to the stormwater flow from the site, and then the volume control is related to water quality. So the sites do not meet the MWRD rate control requirements due to size, but it does require the MWRD volume control requirements. The MWRD volume control requirements, though, would meet whatever kind of improvements the development had to do on that site, would meet the rate control requirements of the village as well. Those improvements are usually permeable paving, bioswales, and bioretention, which was, I believe, done on the site for Andy's Frozen Custard as well, so you're probably familiar with that. But that does not consider any environmental contamination if that was to be present on the site. They would have to do on-site detention. But we did speak with the landowners, and we don't believe that there's any environmental contamination on the site as of yet. But a phase 1 environmental would have to be done to confirm that. So just kind of finishing up on some conclusions about the site specifically. The site characteristics, like the physical site characteristics, do influence the site's ability to attract retail development. The combined site sizes of over 1 acre is going to be more, conducive to redevelopment than the individual sizes of half an acre. Those just might not be large enough to attract kind of significant retail development. As you'll see when we kind of get to the site concepts, we did test out a scenario in which they could develop individually, but just based on what we heard from brokers and other kind of people in the industry that might not be as feasible. The flexible zoning is a great thing for the site. It's going to support most retail land uses and potential tenants. The traffic counts are going to meet most of the requirements of retail tenants, especially those who are kind of looking to be on those busy thoroughfares. And then, as I mentioned, the adjacent land uses could potentially challenge population density requirements, or potentially retailers who want to be closer to kind of big commercial clusters. So I'm going to get into kind of some more retail market information, as we kind of talked a bit about. This might be a refresher from the Jewel work, but in addition to site considerations, retail developers and retail tenants are going to be kind of looking at some of these broader market drivers of retail development and market dynamics. These will include trade area population and workers, national broader kind of retail trends that we're seeing, as well as the regional and local retail performance, retail industry in the area. So this is all kind of similar from the Jewel, so it'll be a little bit of a refresher, but LaGrange Park has and is projected to continue to be about 13,500 residents. It is a stable population. You're not expected to see too much growth or too much decline within the next 10 years. The daytime population is relatively low compared to neighboring communities, so that is something to think about when we're thinking about which types of retail tenants might be interested in developing, just based on if they are really looking for kind of a lunchtime crowd or lunchtime customers. That might be something they consider. That being said, the village does have a very strong median income, especially compared to some of the neighboring communities. So that's another kind of factor that retail developers and retail tenants are going to be looking for when they're looking for expansion. Some of these broader retail trends you're probably familiar with, but there has been substantial growth in e-commerce, which has challenged kind of traditional brick and mortar, traditional retail. Based on the size of these sites, you're not going to get like a major big box retailer anyway, but it does have some other implications. You're seeing kind of more experiential and convenience-focused retailers kind of adapting in this scenario and or kind of in this environment and kind of changing their patterns. We're also seeing kind of a growth in service sales rather than goods. So some of those kind of service-focused retailers are expanding in the current market. As far as the regional retail inventory, the Village of LaGrange Park does not have kind of as big of a retail inventory as some of our neighboring communities. It's about 234,000 square feet at the moment. Obviously, compared to some of these other communities that have large retail centers like Oak Brook and North Riverside, that might be expected. That being said, there has been a pretty decent amount, a significant, not insignificant amount of new development in the village. We'll get a little bit more to that later. A lot of the new retail that has been developed in the area in the past 10 years has focused on existing retail clusters. So as I mentioned before, we're kind of not in a major commercial hub on these two sites. As you're kind of seeing in the past 10 years, these dots might be a little bit small, but most of the new retail is really clustered near Broadview Village Square, North Riverside, and Oak Brook Center. That retail development looks like these supportive strip boxes in the bottom left. Those are the Shops of Broadway near Broadview Village Square. Those kind of new strip retailers do benefit from those supportive kind of adjacencies with the existing centers, which we do not really have here. But that's kind of the typology you're seeing, is a strip retail kind of development. As I mentioned, even though the village does not kind of have as much of an existing inventory, like in total compared to some of the surrounding communities, there has been quite a bit of new development compared to its surrounding communities in the last 10 years. Even in the last 3, this 22,100 square feet of new retail has all been delivered since 2023 with the Andy's Frozen Custard and now the Aldi. That development has clustered near Village Market, kind of as we've seen with those other developments on the last slide. That is kind of what we're seeing more in the broader market. Keep going. They'll also be interested in looking at kind of the performance of retail real estate in the market. As you can see here, the village does have slightly higher retail vacancy than the broader submarket. Markets with higher vacancy rates and lower rents might not attract as significant new retail development. Obviously, that's not always the case. As we've seen, there's been new development here. But that's just something to keep in mind, especially for like speculative real estate development. In the village, we're seeing rents about $5 per square foot lower than the overall submarket. We're also seeing that in the submarket, new construction strip and outlot retail does achieve a premium over the average, and they're getting higher rents of about up to 50 per square feet, closer to those major retail centers. So near Oak Brook and near North Riverside, those are kind of getting the top of market rents at the moment. So that's kind of all the market stuff. I'll just a quick refresher. The village does have a stable population with a strong median income. Just keep in mind that kind of low daytime population might challenge some retailers' interests in the market. General retail trends, there is kind of a switch to kind of more service-oriented businesses, and there's kind of the e-commerce factors kind of challenging traditional brick and mortar retail. The village does have stable rents. However, they are slightly lower than the overall submarket and slightly higher vacancy rates as well. All that being said, the village has been successful in attracting over 20,000 square feet of new construction retail in recent years. So in addition to that kind of background market work, we did a presence absence analysis, which kind of looks at surrounding communities, what types of retail tenants are around there, what do those tenants look like, and that kind of helps us figure out, one, what gaps there might be in the market for certain retailers, as well as what kind of spaces are those businesses occupying to see what might be a fit for this site. So through this exercise, we identified several categories of common nearby retail tenants. And by doing that, we were able to kind of see where do these types of businesses exist, what do they look like, and those factors. That kind of gives us a little bit of insight on the suitability of the site for those types of tenants. One of the first things we did want to look at was restaurants. We have these 4 categories of restaurants: fast casual, which is going to be kind of your counter service, Chipotle's, Noodles and Company, things like that. Fast food drive-through restaurants, sit-down restaurants, and then coffee, tea, and snack establishments. We looked at residents per dining establishment as a metric to kind of figure out what types of restaurants the village might be underserved by. A lower number of residents per establishment would indicate a higher concentration of restaurants. The village does have fewer local dining options, particularly in those coffee, tea, and snack categories and sit-down restaurants. So just a few kind of takeaways of what we got from that analysis. The village may be underserved kind of by all restaurant establishments. Fast casual restaurants seem to prefer high daytime populations and foot traffic. These are located in downtown LaGrange primarily, in the nearby kind of 2-mile market. They like to be around places with high traffic counts, but there are limited nearby options, so that may make the site attractive for certain fast casual tenants, just depending on if they really like daytime population or not. There are currently no drive-through fast food dining options in the village. The nearby locations are kind of clustered near the existing retail centers over in Westchester Commons primarily. The site does have high traffic counts and kind of good traffic flow, so there might be an opportunity for a tenant there in the fast food drive-through category. Nearby sit-down locations are mostly within second-generation retail spaces, so there's few of those that kind of can afford the cost of new construction, but they're mostly single location or local chains. They seem to draw more local clientele based on the Placer AI data, which you can kind of track customers' visits. That's something we noticed, which is pretty interesting. The site is located kind of near a small cluster of established sit-down restaurants in the community, so that might be a draw for a potential sit-down restaurant. Just something to keep in mind, though, is the cost of new construction is high right now. So that might implicate kind of a single location or local chain's ability to afford new construction here. And then coffee, tea, and snacks, as I mentioned before, seems to be underserved per capita in the village compared to the surrounding communities. These are located in a range of building types, just kind of depending on the establishment itself. in a lot of different kind of store formats, but they might be interested in the site's traffic counts, similar to a fast food drive-through might be. And then kind of going into the more daily needs retailers, these can also be personal services, professional services, which we spoke about when you talked about the Jewel a bit. These really do have flexible space needs based on what they offer. A lot of them are located in strip retail centers, so if a strip were to develop on the site, it could have the potential to draw a tenant of personal services or professional services. These are often kind of national chains, which would be more likely to afford the cost of new construction here. Medtail we discussed a bit as well with the Jewel site. These national chains and brands do often occupy new construction retail space, and so that might be an opportunity here as well. They can also kind of have varying size requirements based on the services they provide. Daycare, they're primarily located in second-generation retail space currently in the existing market. They don't really rely as much on traffic counts and visibility, but as we heard from conversations with brokers at the prior work we did with the Jewel, a lot of the new construction daycare providers we're seeing in the market do prefer larger lot sizes so that they can build outdoor recreation space. That might challenge the suitability for a daycare tenant on this site. In addition to kind of looking at what was around in the market and doing the presence-absence analysis, we used kind of a broker database that we have that kind of shows what the preferences of existing retailers are in the market to kind of figure out what types of tenants might be interested in the stats of this site. This is kind of focusing on the restaurants, but as you can see here, sorry, it might be a little small, but the site does appear to meet the baseline location criteria of many of the restaurant retailers expanding in Illinois. As I mentioned kind of in the market assessment, the median household income is strong. This is within a mile of the site, so not of the village. That's 101,000, and it is exceeding the minimum there for all of these expanding retailers. Minimum traffic counts here are great as well. They are hitting the minimum for most of these retailers as well. Just something to keep in mind here as well is that daytime population. Some of these are going to want to see higher daytime populations as well. But based on these stats, it does seem that most of these retailers in these restaurant categories would potentially be interested in this site. Going on kind of more to these daily needs retailers, kind of same thing here. The site does appear to meet most of the location criteria of these expanding retailers in Illinois. And yeah, just to keep in mind, these can vary quite a bit from personal services, professional services, and Medtail, just depending on what those tenants specifically are doing, whether it's a dentist office or a physical therapist. They might just have different requirements, but it does seem to meet those across the board. So just kind of to summarize the potential retail tenant conclusions, the median household income of the area does exceed those minimum requirements for most national retail tenants. The 3-mile population density is really strong here. I mentioned that the forest preserve might kind of limit the population density right near the site, but often they'll look at a broader radius, and the 3-mile population density does exceed those minimum requirements. The strong traffic counts on the site are also likely to meet the requirements of most tenants. And then, as I've mentioned before too, just the 1-mile population density might challenge kind of the feasibility for certain tenants, and then the daytime population as well, particularly those fast casual restaurants. It might be something to consider here on the site. With that, I will send it back to Fran to go over the development concepts.
Great, thank you, Tony. So just to summarize, we do think there is pretty strong retail potential here for a variety of tenants. So we're happy to have some good news coming back to you after I think the last presentation wasn't quite as positive. So just to be clear, those tenant typologies and the specific examples Tony was showing, those are examples. There are a lot of national chains that would not consider this site because of its location, because we're not in a major shopping center. But there are a lot of particularly franchise restaurants that are local chains, but with national chains with local franchisees that we think that would be appropriate here. We heard specifically from brokers, several different ideas from Dunkin', Jimmy John's, Culver's, Jersey Mike's, just kind of a range of types of restaurants. That's in addition to the medtail retailers and kind of service uses that could also work on the site. So as I said, we worked with Kimley Horn to take these market findings and the work that Tony was talking about in terms of thinking about typical square footage of the different retailers, what they need in terms of parking, and translated that into 3 different redevelopment concepts. Now, these 2 sites are owned independently, and so the first concept you're seeing here is assuming that 1 site at a time would redevelop. What you see is the result after both sites develop, but you could have, either the north site with the dry cleaners undergo redevelopment and the Jiffy Lube stays, or you could have the alternate scenario. So these 2 site plans, which you'll see in the full report, do work on their own. Each of them has 1 access point. For the north site, it's up at the north end of the site. To the south, it's to the south end of the site. And each of them would be able to self-park. If both sites happen, either within close proximity of time or over a longer period of time, it is really important just to have the circulation between the 2 sites. And so here you'd see a little bit of, you do see the circulation provided for, and the village would want to make sure if 1 site is coming forward for redevelopment that you're sort of planning ahead and allowing for and encouraging the potential for a future cross-access easement to allow for that circulation. So you might lose a couple of parking spaces if 1 site is redeveloped and the other isn't in the interim, but then that can be worked through as a future redevelopment comes in. So if one of the sites does redevelop, you could get a building of about 4,000 square feet maximum. That could be appropriate for any of the service uses we're talking about. It could also be for fast casual restaurants, breakfast places, or even kind of smaller full service restaurants. The next 2 concepts are both for the full site overall. So this assumes that the 2 property owners work together and facilitate a redevelopment. Concept B here is a strip retail center, and it actually has a drive-through along the back end of the retail center. So this would be a multi-tenant building. It's about 9,000 square feet, which we're in the version that we're showing here. It has parking of 4 spaces per 1,000, which is probably a little light. If it's going to be more heavily restaurants, you'd probably want to shrink the building and have more parking. If it's more heavily service uses, it's probably appropriately parked here. We thought it was important to evaluate this drive-through option because if you're thinking about sort of a coffee shop that wants to have drive-through access in the mornings, that's really important. It does run along the back of the site, so we would have to think through things like whether, some additional work on the retaining wall toward the back end would be required, but this is a site plan that we think works based on what we've seen in the market and based on Kimley Horn's engineering and site planning experience. One thing to note here that this would require a zoning variance. This is in the C1 zoning district, which requires that the buildings be up on the street. And so this just sort of assumes that variance would be granted. And then finally, we have a concept that is a smaller building, but this is a drive-through fast food restaurant. So with any fast food retailer, we're going to need more circulation for drive-throughs. They tend to want double drive-through lanes or at least additional stacking, and then a good amount of parking. So that concept would work on this full site combined. This is actually a little bit overparked based on the parking counts that we have now, but we think that's actually a good concept to be illustrating because it shows to any potential tenants that are in the market that there's some flexibility and that they can probably make their specific site plan work on the site. Once we worked through the concepts, we then, again, took this just one step further, which was to think about, okay, we have some market potential. We have types of development that could work physically within the site parameters. Now we want to think about whether these developments are financially feasible. Could a developer come forward, propose a project, and be able to pull it off on these sites given the current market? So what we've done is take what we call sort of a prototypical conceptual look at the feasibility. You know, we're not developers. We do not have a specific development proposal. We didn't go out and get bids for any specific buildings. But what we have done is take the overall building parameters. We've taken our knowledge of the market and benchmarks from working on development deals and from industry sources and pulled together an estimate of potential construction costs for these different scenarios and layered in all the different elements that you would see in a potential pro forma. So these are all average numbers. They're not specific to the concepts. These would all have to be refined if a developer came forward. But there is a real benefit in doing this just to see if at a high level, the average type of development that we see in the market could be feasible here. So what we found, there's a lot of numbers here, and when you see the report, you can read through in a little bit more detail, but what we're doing is comparing the income that would be generated within the development. So that's the projected NOI line. It's the third line down. That's net operating income. That's revenue that's generated every year by the development. We ultimately are comparing that to the costs of development, and that gives you a metric that's called yield on cost that developers think about when they're sort of considering at a high level whether something makes sense. I'm not going to go through all the details here. I'm going to highlight just a couple of kind of key assumptions we've made. One is land valuation. So again, these sites are not for sale. We know that they have operating businesses on them. So what we've done is pull together recent land sales for sites that had existing businesses and were then redeveloped. So we think this is an okay starting place in terms of land value, but it's going to be highly dependent on the specifics of what these property owners are looking for. When we think about demolition and site work, that's kind of another kind of big assumption. Tony mentioned that we don't think there are environmental issues based on our conversations with the landowners, but you really don't know until more detailed assessments are undertaken. So we're sort of assuming that what we've heard is accurate, that there's not contamination, but if something like that were found, that would really increase construction costs. So all of that being said, we do see for the first two standalone concepts and the retail strip center with the drive-through, that when we look at the returns, that yield on cost metric that I mentioned, we do see them within a typical range. We think developers of retail at this point would be looking for a 7 to 8% yield on cost, and we see, you know, between 7.1 and 7.7 for those scenarios. For the drive-through scenario at the end, the fast food scenario, that one is a bit lower. So beneath the 7% threshold. But again, those businesses sort of operate in a different way. If we're thinking about a fast food restaurant, they're not going to be rented from a property owner. So, you know, there might be some wiggle room there. We did take a look at business district potential revenues because these sites are in a business district. For some of the reasons that I've talked about, you might end up having a financing gap when somebody actually pencils out a specific project. Construction costs might continue to be higher. You might have a tenant that can't pay as much rent. Maybe it's a local restaurant that can't afford the build-out costs. You could have scenarios, with higher site prep that might be needed. So we went ahead and looked at the business district revenue projections to understand the ability of that revenue source to help offset some of those costs if someone comes to you with a potential gap on a project. Business district revenues are it is just sales tax. That's all a business district is. And so you have to have a sales tax generating use. Restaurants will generate those sales taxes. Some of the service uses that we're talking about will not. So you get a pretty wide range across different scenarios depending on what the tenant types are. But based on what we've shown you today, you could probably have up to about $675,000 in business district revenue over time generated by certain projects. And that could really range from 0 up to 675. So this is a source that could help fill any potential gaps. And what we've done just to illustrate the impacts of business district revenues is show you the impacts to the yield on cost if you layer in estimated BD revenues. So it really bumps up the yield on cost metric by a full percentage point. And, that just shows you the impact that if you have a project that's a little bit below typical benchmarks, this really could be a meaningful way to enhance the developer's revenues and make them be able to actually, achieve financing and move forward with the project. So I know we've provided a lot of information, but big picture, we are seeing retail market potential on the site at a very high level. That's the big picture headline. The site is more likely to attract redevelopment if it's combined. And so thinking through how to facilitate conversations between the two owners and kind of advanced development, we think will be important if you want to move forward with development on the site and sort of get the process moving. Certain options we think will be financially feasible without assistance, but you do have the business district revenue available if needed to help support development. That can help with environmental, land acquisition, construction costs, or other development needs. Beyond that, I think working with the site owners is important. Once they are to the point of thinking about marketing, if they are interested in moving forward, which we had conversations with both, and we heard an interest in kind of pursuing discussions or thinking through options from both of the landowners, but Village could actively support marketing and think through how to support redevelopment. And I think with some of the information that we're providing, it's going to be really useful in talking to potential tenants and helping think through kind of next steps on development. That being said, it is still a small site. There are a lot of development sites in the region, and so thinking through things like having the business district revenues available, thinking about zoning relief, and kind of being proactive about where the village is willing to offer some flexibility, that can be really helpful in facilitating and advancing development. So we will pause there, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Fran. And Tony, any questions from the board? Trustee Stewart? Any?
Strip center concept, how many businesses would be able to fit in the 1,000 square feet?
So it depends on the specific businesses. That could be anywhere from 2 to probably 4. Depends on the size. We see a pretty wide range of individual tenants from 1,500, 2,000 square feet up to maybe 4,500 square feet.
And the previous meeting, we were talking about the acquisition of national tenants, and now you're saying it's a little bit more optimistic. Can you specify any tenants that you think would fall into the yes category for this project?
So they were the ones I mentioned earlier that we were, based on our evaluation and the broker interviews, if we're thinking about coffee options, it's sort of the Dunkin' idea. Right, exactly. Yep.
Those are the specific ones that would potentially show interest.
We think so, yeah.
I just have a question more for staff. So next steps after this, what are they?
Well, we definitely want to be in communication with the two property owners, probably review the final study with them, and talk about, their reaction to it. As you heard from Fran, and as staff knew ahead of starting the project, they were interested. I think they'll continue to be interested likely, but I think sharing the findings of the market study and these redevelopment concepts will maybe get them thinking a little bit more about their own next steps. I think Fran mentioned a potential next step for the village could be to take a more active role in promoting and marketing these sites if the two owners were amenable to that. So I think those are conversations we definitely want to have in circling back with those property owners. Julia, did you want to add?
Well, the only thing I would add is what you mentioned to me earlier when we talked about it, which was the potential for an environmental study, whether that needs to happen and whether it should happen sooner rather than later. just to help secure our understanding of the total cost of redevelopment. That was just the one thing.
That's right. And just to add to that, Julia, in certain conversations with brokers, when we were talking about the sites, it was like, oh, you have a dry cleaners. Like, of course, that must be contaminated. It's like, well, we've heard it's not. We've heard that they're not doing the dry cleaning on site. Similar conversations around the Jiffy Lube, a little bit of hesitation just because people are concerned knowing what's currently on those two sites that there would be contamination. So I think that is an important next step just to verify, both for an understanding of the cost, but also just to be able to clear up any misconceptions about what's going on those sites.
Thanks.
Trustee Leidner?
Thank you, Mr. President. That was actually my question. What's next steps? Availability of a hard copy of the presentation?
Absolutely.
Forthcoming? Okay.
We'll get copies for everyone.
Fran, there used to be a fast food on that site.
On the dry cleaner site, right?
Two of them, Caruso's Beef, too.
Yeah, so it's possible. I know the counts are different today than they were
Yeah.
30 years ago, but thank you so much for your presentation. Tony, thank you. Yes.
I just had one more.
Trustee Stewart, yes.
Just based on the preliminary numbers.
You want something?
For concept B, it seemed like they gave the best ROI from my understanding.
Concept B does look, based on this evaluation, to have the highest returns. I think the one potential drawback there is that you do have a multi-tenant situation, and so you do have to think about whether if these property owners do they want to sell the properties outright to someone else? Do they want to partner and redevelop? And if they are partnering, thinking through whether they actually want to be in kind of that multi-tenant management situation or not is sort of an important consideration. We both know that both of them have had long-term tenants, and that's pretty attractive in terms of like having one tenant compared to multiple.
What is the likelihood that they're in alignment, both tenants, with the redevelopment or them moving on and having new businesses? Do you know? The two tenants that are there right now.
When we spoke to each of the property owners, they both communicated to us similarly that they were curious, they were very interested in this process, they were supportive of the process, so there were a lot of similarities. But our conversation with the property owners was not the most recent conversation, and that was with SB Friedman. So they would be best suited to answer that question.
Yeah, and we had conversations with the property owners, so the landlords of those two buildings. We did not have conversations with the tenants, so we did not speak to Jiffy Lube or Superior Cleaners. Just with the understanding that if there is redevelopment, the rents would be substantially higher on those sites than they are now. I would think that there would be new tenants
Okay,
in the
so that-
redevelopment.
Okay, so that was kind of what,
Sort of
so they're open to getting bought out with something replacing them versus them redeveloping
The property owners?
the property owners.
Yes, I think each of the property owners has experience with redevelopment, and they own several pieces of property in other areas of the country. So I don't think that this is new to them, although I don't know their total experience in brand-new redevelopment, but they've definitely have experience with developments, and they understand, I think, in some sense, the potential. But I think that they will certainly appreciate this presentation, and we can't wait to give it to them.
Yeah, and I think from any property owner's perspective, a commercial property owner, if there is a desire for redevelopment, the numbers have to make sense financially. So they need to be doing better than they are now with existing leases. And, they're the only ones who can really do that evaluation. We don't have access to their financials or details. But I do think that this information will be really helpful in advancing that discussion. And as Julia is saying, both do have experience with owning and managing properties and then also thinking about redevelopment. So again, determining whether they would redevelop the site themselves or potentially sell to a third party, that would all have to be worked out.
So I was going to just observe that I think the best evidence of whether either or both of these property owners is interested in redevelopment is whether either of them or both of them together will agree to hire a commercial real estate broker and actually sign a listing agreement saying, you know, we will pay you this much money if you bring us a buyer or a tenant. So I've seen it happen both ways. Sometimes each property owner wants to sign his own. Maybe, see, up until now, they have not been on the hook for anything, money-wise. So you will be able to see how serious they really are about redeveloping their properties when Julia and Maggie asked them, are you prepared to, you know, do you know commercial real estate brokers? Should we give you some names of local people? And then see if they have to take that next step. We can't do it for them unless we buy the property.
And just to add to that idea, that just because it is two properties and because there's more potential with the two sites together, I think there might be interim steps before just listing the property in terms of thinking through, would we be willing to do something together, thinking through what that kind of agreement might look like. And then, you know, I don't think that either of them would probably jump immediately and go list their property as a result of our study. I think there are conversations and some evaluation they would have to do to figure out the next steps.
Any other comments? Trustee Council?
Thank you, President DeCipio. With regard to the environmental impact studies, is there a financial burden on the property owners or on the people that would be interested in purchasing? I'm not quite sure, you know, because that's a big cost, regardless of who's taking it on. So can you address that?
Sure. So typically in a redevelopment scenario, definitely someone who's going to purchase a property will undertake environmental assessments if they haven't already been done. In a situation where there's believed to be contamination or the perception of contamination, I think property owners often take that upon themselves to show that they have a clean site. I do believe there have been historically some environmental assessments done. I just don't know the age of them or, you know, their availability. So I think that all will have to be discussed with the current property owners.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Franny, I just have one question. It's very premature, and I know it, but I've got to ask it. Any room for Julia Starbucks? Is it something that, like, concept B that Starbucks would be inquiring about or not at all?
It's a good question. It is a tough question. They are so specific about their sites and circulation. I would be interested if you all are still in discussions with Starbucks, what their reaction would be to the concept. They do like to have double drive-through lanes, which we have a single lane with a lot of stacking. So I'm curious about that, but you know, they don't need a box anything near this big, and I've seen some really strange Starbucks sites, you know. Exactly. They do have some wiggle room within their parameters. So like Tony mentioned, we're on the right side of the street in terms of traffic flows in the mornings, which is great. I think the challenge here is that it's not within a larger retail center, and Starbucks loves retail surrounding them and retail across the street. So maybe it would help with a discussion, but I can't.
Thank you, Fran. Thank you, Tony. Any other questions? Okay, thank
Right.
you.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, moving on, we have public participation. We did that already. We did village manager report too. Administration Committee, Trustee Council.
Thank you, President DeCipio. My report is as follows. Seasonal watering restrictions are in effect. As the weather heats up, the village would like to remind residents of seasonal watering regulations that are in effect through September 15th. Odd street addresses can water lawns on odd-numbered calendar days, and even street addresses can water on even-numbered calendar days. Thank you for your cooperation. Arbor Day 2024. On June 14, the village planted a tree at Oak and Newberry in memory of Bert C. Metz. Bert was a 70-year LaGrange Park resident, an active community member, and loving father of 4. Bert was nominated by his son Gary to be the 2024 Arbor Day honoree. Gary describes his father as a kind, selfless, and giving man, truly embodying the spirit of Arbor Day. Thank you to all who attended this special event. Youth Commission vacancies. The village will be seeking 2 new members to serve on the Youth Commission during the next school year. This is a great opportunity for students in grades 7 through 12 to engage with their peers on community issues. Meetings are held once a month on Monday evenings from September through June. Visit the village's website to learn more and apply by June 28. The village offices will be closed on Thursday, July 4th in observance of the 4th of July. Regular hours will resume on Friday, July 5th at 9 a.m. Thank you, and that concludes my report.
Thank you, Trustee Council. Moving on to Building and Zoning, Trustee Zora.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to report the building department activities for May 2024. 99 building permits were issued in May compared to 117 in May 2023. As of May, the pace of permit submittals year to date is slightly less than the pace of submittals at this time last year. Estimated construction costs for last month were just over $2.8 million, which is considerably more than the $1.7 million that was realized in May 2023. Permit fees collected last month equaled nearly $60,000, which was more than the $36,689 of permit fees collected in May 2023. 131 building inspections were conducted over the past month compared to 245 in May 2023. 5 were not approved. A total of 19 new code enforcement cases were recorded last month. 5 of those projects were closed out, and the remaining 14 cases require further code enforcement action. And then I have one item for discussion on action. Paculia LLC, DBA Wood Food Systems, LGP is the applicant, proposing text amendments to Section 153.131, Section 153.177, and Section 153.303 of the zoning code. The text amendments would define a new use called wholesale distribution ancillary to retail and allow for wholesale distribution ancillary to retail as a special use in the C-1 commercial district on Maple Avenue from 30th Street to 31st Street, subject to certain use standards. If the text amendments are approved in wholesale distribution ancillary to retail is established as a new special use, the applicant intends to apply for that special use to allow Wood Food Systems, Inc. to operate at 1140 North Maple Avenue. The Planning and Zoning Commission held a public hearing regarding the application on May 21st, 2024. The applicant attended the hearing and provided testimony. The minutes from the meeting, court reporter transcript, and findings of fact are in our memorandum. Upon conclusion of the public hearing, the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended approval of the proposed text amendments by a vote of 6-0. Staff concurs with the recommendation of the PZC. I'd like to make a motion to approve an ordinance granting zoning text amendments to find a new use called wholesale distribution ancillary to retail, case number 24-0003.
Second.
Motion and second. Discussion. Trustee Zora.
This is the precursor to what the applicant wants to do in this establishment before they go for, what is it called? Not the text amendment. Maggie, what are what are the next steps? Special use permit. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I think I see no reason to not approve this. The PZC also unanimously approved this. Thank you.
Any other comments from the board? Seeing none, Megan, call the roll.
Trustee Lautner?
Yes.
Trustee Zora?
Yes.
Trustee Council?
Yes.
Trustee Sheehan?
Yes.
Trustee Stewart?
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously, Mr. President.
Thank you, Megan.
Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Zora. Moving on to engineering capital projects, Trustee Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. President. Construction has begun on Edgewood and Richmond water main project. Unique Plumbing will begin by installing water main on Edgewater Avenue between Ogden Avenue and Richmond. They will then bore the water main on Richmond Avenue west of Edgewood to the connection point with Nazareth Academy. Once the water main has been pressure tested and chlorinated, transfer of private water services can begin. The project is expected to be completed late summer. Design work has started on the Park Road Improvement Project. The street will be reconstructed between Woodlawn and Oak Avenue. Improvements will include a new curb and gutter driveways and the east side public sidewalk. Drainage structures will be replaced and new storm installed where needed. The MWRD permit has been applied for and the project has also been submitted to IDOT for approval. Lastly, construction is scheduled to start in June on the MWRD Green Infrastructure Alley project. The first phase of work will be the installation of storm sewers by Suburban General Construction. The next phase of work will be the removal and excavation of the alley by the prime contractor, Davis Concrete Construction Company. Work should be completed by the end of late summer. That concludes my report this evening, Mr. President.
Thank you, Trustee Stewart. Public Safety, Trustee Sheehan.
Thank you, Mr. President. The following is the Police Department report for May. In addition to the attached statistical summaries, the following items are being reported to appraise the village board and president and trustees' current police department operations. The total number of crimes reported for the first 5 months of 2024 are 25% lower than last year, with 96 incidents reported this year compared to 128 in 2023. Traffic enforcement is at 1,376 total tickets issued through May of 24. Overall police activity is at 988 total incidents reported in the month of May. Total incidents for the first 5 months total 4,983 total incidents. Of those 988 total incidents for the month of May, 53 were assisted of fire department, 247 were self-initiated building or park checks, 168 were traffic stops, and 24 were closed home checks. PD staff took part in multiple Memorial Day celebrations throughout town and in neighboring jurisdictions. Department members attended 298.5 hours of training, along with the completion of required monthly online training and Lexipol daily training bulletins. Detective Nick Spurgash became a certified peer-to-peer supporter through the We Never Walk Alone. We Never Walk Alone is a platform that connects sworn law enforcement officers with peer support officers and mental health professionals across the country. A new 2025 Ford Interceptor utility was ordered through the Suburban Purchasing Cooperative. The Board of Police Commissioners authorized an initial application process due to the exhausting of the current police officer eligibility list. All sworn officers participated in outdoor firearms training qualifications. PD staff assisted with the Run for the Roses. Don't miss out on the upcoming National Night Out event, which is taking place on Tuesday, August 6th from 6 to 9 p.m. on the grounds of the Tower Museum in Western Springs. Follow the police department's social media platforms for further details. Please follow the police department on the Facebook page at LaGrange Park Police Department, Twitter account at LaGrange Park PD, and Instagram at LaGrange Park PD. A friendly reminder about securing one's personal property at all times. Please lock your vehicles and residence, especially during the overnight hours. If you're going on vacation, please utilize the new online vacation watch portal, frontlinepss.com/LaGrange Park, or log on to the village's website and access the portal under the police department's page. If you don't have internet access, feel free to fill out a vacation watch card at the PD here at Village Hall between the hours of 9 a.m. and 4:30 p.m. Okay, we'll switch over to the fire department activities for May. EMS incidents the month, 162. There have been 777 year-to-date compared to 761 year-to-date in 23. Fire rescue incidents this month, 51. There have been 238 year-to-date compared to 217 in 23. 9 candidates graduated from the Basic Operations Fire Academy at College of DuPage. A remembrance ceremony was held for the 25th anniversary of Line of Death duty. Chief Arthur Bucky Tullis responding to a fire alarm at Bethlehem Woods. As part of such his original badge and helmet shield number was retired. Personnel began annual hose testing for the year, which will continue throughout the summer. Final fire alarm and occupancy inspections took place at Aldi. Several personnel received Years of Service Award from IDPH as part of Emergency Medical Services Week. The FD received a Spiller Pays reimbursement for the response to the ethanol tanker rollover in March. Personnel assisted with EMS coverage at the Run for the Roses, staffing 2 ambulances and our squad. They treated 1 young child who fainted at the finish line. Personnel brought the ladder truck to the Ready Teddy annual picnic. Several FD personnel attended and assisted with the Memorial Day ceremony at Memorial Park. Thanks to Maggie, JJ, his kids, and Chief Magus for planting flowers in front of the fire station and in the rear of the PD as part of Community Volunteer Cleanup Day. The fire department welcomed a new PSI paramedic to our contract, Jacob Weiner. 2 incidents of interest. On Wednesday, May 1st at 5:42 p.m., personnel responded to an activated fire alarm, which turned out to be a fire in an apartment of the 2nd floor of the 6-story Maplewood building. 1 fire sprinkler extinguished most of the fire prior to FD's arrival, with personnel completing the extinguishment. On Wednesday, May 22nd at 5:35 p.m., personnel responded to a near head-on vehicle crash at 31st west of LaGrange Road. 1 driver was heavily trapped with significant injuries. Paramedics administered advanced life support to take the driver to care to the driver, while multiple rescue tools were used to extricate him, which took 24 minutes. Unfortunately, in the coming weeks, he succumbed to his injuries. We have an action item for intergovernmental agreement, administrative adjudication. The purpose is to consider and approve an IGA with the Village of LaGrange for the administration for adjudication court. Following the recent approval of an ordinance to implement administrative adjudication, the Village of LaGrange Park is now positioned to formalize its partnership with the Village of LaGrange through an intergovernmental agreement. This agreement will clearly define the expectations and responsibilities of both parties in establishing and managing a shared adjudication court system. Authorized by the Illinois Intergovernmental Cooperation Act, an IGA is a collaborative effort ratified by our village boards to provide a shared service to each of our cooperating villages. In this context, the IGA will facilitate the creation, administration of a shared adjudication court. The establishment of an administrative adjudication system will enhance the efficiency of our local justice system, streamline the resolution of ordinance violations, and increase local revenue by retaining the fines. By partnering with the Village of LaGrange for a shared court system, we can share resources, reduce costs, and provide a more accessible adjudication process for our residents. Key components of the IGA: 1, adjudication court system. Hearings will be held at the LaGrange Village Hall. An annual schedule of hearing dates will be posted and adjusted as needed. Standardized forms and administrative support will be provided for both villages. Cases will be heard sequentially, starting with those from LaGrange, followed by LaGrange Park. 2, hearing officer and compensation. An administrative hearing officer will be jointly selected by both villages. LaGrange will act as the administrative entity and will invoice LaGrange Park quarterly for shared costs. Each village will bear separate costs related to their cases. 3, clerical duties and security. LaGrange will provide clerical support and security for the hearings. Recording devices will be used to document hearings, with recordings made available upon request. 4, fines and collection. Each village will ensure the presence of their staff for fine collection at the hearings. The process for managing appeals, prosecutions, and enforcement of judgments will be handled individually by each village. Mutual indemnification and liability. Both villages are agreed to indemnify and hold each other harmless from any claims arising out of the adjudication process. Staff recommendation. Staff recommends the approval of the IGA between the Village of LaGrange Park and the Village of LaGrange for the administration of an adjudication court. This partnership will provide a cost-effective and efficient means of handling local ordinance violations and enhance the overall administration of justice within our communities. It's a motion and action item. Therefore, Mr. President, at this time, make a motion to approve a resolution approving an intergovernmental agreement with the Village of LaGrange for the administration of an adjudication court.
A motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion, trustee Sheehan?
Thank you, Mr. President. We've talked about this for a while. It's finally going to happen. Look forward to seeing how this plays out. I know, Chief, do you have any questions or comments?
No, sir.
You feel the same way I do?
Yes, sir.
Very good. That's all I had, Mr. President. I support this.
Any other comments from the board? Seeing none, Megan, call the roll.
Trustee Lautner?
Yes.
Trustee Zara?
Yes.
Trustee Council?
Yes.
Trustee Sheehan?
Yes.
Trustee Stewart?
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously, Mr. President.
Thank you, Megan.
That concludes public safety. Now
Thank
let's,
you, trustee Sheehan, and now continue on to trustee Sheehan show.
there you go. Now we'll
Public
switch.
Works Committee.
We'll switch from public works to from public safety to public works. The first monthly report for May, staff replaced 3 lead service lines with copper. DPW continued water line surveys with residents by hand delivering notices. Staff has collected positive data and will continue through the summer. The brush collection program kicked off and will continue the first full week of each month through October. The mulch delivery program this year was a huge success. Over 250 loads of mulch were delivered to residents. Staff began to remove parking restriction signs on the west side of the village. Remaining signs to be removed are anticipated to be completed next month. Tree trimming and clearing were performed on the Brainerd Avenue curve to control overgrown vegetation. Matt DiCasola attended the APWA Road Scholar Program in the first week of May. This is an advanced training program for public works employees, which is conducted over a 3-year span. Staff attended the APWA Rodeo during National Public Works Week, which was this month. Street patches were completed along with parkway restorations. GIS work has continued collecting data and village-owned assets along with continued training throughout the village. Water meters were read in Section 2. 15 monthly bacterial water samples were taken along with UCMR5 samples. Various water and sewer work orders were completed along with resident tree concerns and general construction inquiries. Routine maintenance of the department's fleet and equipment was also completed, as well as police and fire vehicles. Okay. Now we'll go to Edgewood and Richmond water main project, construction engineering. Purpose is to approve an engineering service agreement with Edward Hancock Engineering Company for the Edgewood and Richmond water main project construction engineering services. General background, the fiscal year 24-25 budget includes replacing the water main on Edgewood between Woodlawn and Ogden and installing a new feeder main on Richmond between Park and Edgewood. In addition, the village's engineering firm, Edward Hancock Engineering, will provide professional construction engineering services in the amount of $151,400. The fiscal year 24-25 budget includes $180,800 for this service in the Water Distribution Professional Services Fund 570-51000. Staff recommends approving an agreement between the village and Edward Hancock Engineering Company. Therefore, I make a motion, Mr. President, to approve and authorize the village manager to execute agreements between the Village of LaGrange Park and Edward Hancock Engineering for construction engineering services in the amount of $151,400 for the Edgewood and Richmond water main project.
Second.
Motion is second. Discussion, trustee Sheehan?
Thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, it comes under budget of the $180,800 by a pretty large amount. Hancock has served as well, and everything's rocking and rolling on this side of town, so it'd be nice to get this done too.
Thank you, trustee Sheehan. Mark, any additions?
That's just, that's the most of that cost is done by the hour, so.
Thank you. Any other comments from the board? Megan, call the roll.
Trustee Lautner?
Yes.
Sorry. Trustee Zora?
Yes.
Trustee Council?
Yes.
Trustee Sheehan?
Yes.
Trustee Stewart? The motion passes unanimously, Mr. President.
Thank you, Megan.
Okay, next we'll have the MWRD GI Green Alley Project, Edwin Hancock Engineering Agreement. The purpose is to approve an engineering service agreement with Edwin Hancock Engineering Company for construction engineering services for the upcoming MWRD Green Infrastructure Alley Project. The village board approved a contract with Hancock Engineering at the November 28, 23 board meeting for design and construction engineering. At that time, the motion stated to approve and authorize the village manager to execute agreements between the Village of LaGrange Park and Edwin Hancock Engineering for design and construction engineering services in the amount of $42,000 for the MWRDG alley project. Unfortunately, that motion was written incorrectly. It should have stated for design engineering only. The agreement you see attached on page 5 had both design and construction engineering compensation. Staff is recommending the village board approve the portion which authorizes $43,000 in compensation for construction engineering since the project will be underway shortly. The fiscal year 24-25 budget includes $43,000 in expenditures for this service and the 31st Street Barnesdale TIF 281-5051-000. Staff recommends that the village board approve the construction engineering portion of the original agreement with Edwin Hancock Engineering Company. Make a motion to approve that portion of the agreement dated November 29th, 2023 between Edwin Hancock Engineering and the Village of LaGrange Park, which authorizes $43,000 for the construction engineering for the MWRD alley project.
Second.
Motion is second. Discussion. Trustee Sheehan.
Okay. In rereading this, up on top we made mention of November 28th, and here in the motion it says November 29th.
The discrepancy is that the village meeting at which the agreement was approved was dated the 28th.
Signed it on the 29th?
Signed it on the 29th.
Okay, thanks for the clarification, Attorney Keating. No, I support this, Mr. President.
Any other comments from the trustee Lautner?
Thank you, Mr. President. So thank you, Trustee Sheehan, for clarification on that. Second thing, though, is just for clarification, did we originally think that the $42,000 was going to cover both? So it was just automatically included in the verbiage?
Yeah.
Not intended to cover the construction?
Well, if you look at the agreement, there was two sums of compensation. One was for design, one was for construction engineering, okay? And when that went through, because we knew we were doing the design to get going in front of, get it all ahead of, to get everything submitted to MWRD, I didn't realize that there was a construction compensation in there. So I only approved the original one for $42,000. So when Mark, we actually had a bill come through and we realized that we only approved that. We had now approving the construction engineering.
Okay, so when we budgeted this year, the $43,000, which for this service in the 31st and Barnesdale TIF, is that a different category than we had originally thought it should go into, or is that where it appropriately should go, the 281,50, 51,000?
That's where we budgeted it.
That is where it's budgeted. Okay. Okay, thanks.
And
Thanks for
just
the
to further clarify, Trustee Lautner, the separate pricing for each of the levels of service is identified on page 5 of the agreement that was approved.
Gotcha. Thank you for support.
Any other comments from the board? Seeing none, Megan, call the roll.
Trustee Lautner?
Yes.
Trustee Zora?
Yes.
Trustee Council?
Yes.
Trustee Sheehan?
Yes.
Trustee Stewart?
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously, Mr. President.
Thank you, Megan.
Okay, lastly, we have equipment purchase. new 2025 snowplow truck with equipment. The purpose is to approve a purchase of a new 2025 Peterbilt truck with snowplow and salting equipment from Lindco Equipment Sales. The fiscal year 24-25 budget includes $300,000 to purchase a new snowplow truck with snow fighting equipment for the Public Works Department. The current truck this vehicle will replace is a 1999 GMC C7500 that has served our department well over the last 2 decades. Public Works has researched snowplow trucks and equipment for a few years in preparation for this build. The unfortunate issue is the availability of trucks, long lead times, and pricing vulnerabilities. The local Peterbilt dealer, JX Peterbilt, could put us on a waiting list with a minimum of 1 year's wait time and will not guarantee the pricing until the truck has a confirmed build date. Lindco Equipment has built several trucks for the department in the past, including our current 3 frontline snowplow trucks. Lindco Equipment Sales secured and purchased 25 cabs and chassis from a Peterbilt dealer in Michigan and has taken them on their lot for immediate sale. We also worked with Lindco on the build out, which includes a dump body, a hydraulic system, salt controller, removal V-box salt spreader, front plow hitch, wing plow, and camera systems. During the budget process, we budgeted $300,000 for the complete truck build-out, anticipating the cab and chassis would cost roughly $130,000, with the remainder for the uplift. However, since then, the cost of the cab and chassis has gone up to approximately $150,000, which puts the complete truck at $319,971, over by $19,971. If we compare our current frontline snow fighting trucks to this one, they are almost identical, except we removed the underbelly plow and added a wing plow. Adding the wing plow provides an additional 6 feet of plowing width during low traffic volume or nighttime plowing when minimal cars are parked on the street, or can be raised against the side of the vehicle when not needed, or the volume of vehicles is high. The fiscal year 24-25 budget includes expenditures in 3 funds. Capital Projects Fund, $210,000. Water Fund, $60,000. Sewer Fund, $30,000. Village Attorney Keating previously approved Sourcewell for large purchases. LaGrange Park is a member of Sourcewell, a national cooperative bidding firm. Staff recommends that the village board approve, quote, 240376I. Is that an I or a 1? Okay, thanks. Dash SWL from Lindco Equipment Sales for a new snowplow truck with equipment in the amount of $319,971. Motion to approve. Therefore, Mr. President, make a motion to approve the purchase of the 2025 Peterbilt truck with snow plowing equipment from Lindco Equipment Sales with Sourcewell pricing for $319,971, and to authorize the village manager to execute the necessary documents.
Second.
Motion and second. Discussion. Trustee Sheehan?
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to give credit first and foremost to Director Ratty for having the foresight to make this possible. As we went through a couple years ago getting Chief's vehicle, how long did we wait? 3 years? 4 years?
Not that long.
Yeah. Yeah. And everybody knows what's going on with the economy. Everything's going up. You try and price a truck or a car lately, everything's going up. So the fact that we can get this, we can get it built. I had the opportunity to check out a Peterbilt truck at a Northwest Suburban Public Works. It's a nice truck. It's a really nice truck. We got 20 years out of the old one. We'll get 20 or more out of the new one. I guess I like the idea of the side plow. I think that for plowing operations in the middle of the night, you're only gonna have to go down the street once. So you're gonna cut the hourly time that the crews are spent on the street during snow events, and hopefully there's no cars out, which there shouldn't be. You know, our residents are pretty accustomed to curb plowing. With this extra 6 foot, nothing's gonna change. We're still gonna get the same curb to curb clean that all the other villages around us admire and look forward to our town, correct?
Correct. Yes, that is correct.
Okay. Yeah, I support this. Peter built a really nice truck, and like I said, kudos to you for having the foresight to get this done.
Any other comments? Trustee Wagner?
Thank you, Mr. President. So what will you do with the old one?
It's a good question. I haven't gotten that far yet. You know, once we know that this is going to be coming in, you know, we'll declare that one surplus first, and then, you know, there's several opportunities or different auction sites we can potentially use. We can try to go get bids. You know, the dump body on that vehicle is pretty much worn out. You know, it's an old truck. It's been around a long time. I remember when it first came to us back in '99. It's been used a lot, but I'm not sure what kind of value. I haven't looked into that part yet. I don't think there's going to be too much of a value on it, but, you know, we'll do our best at it.
Well, by the time we receive the new one and the fall season or winter season is upon, I mean, possible might serve as an additional unit or backup or whatever, if you have the resources and the manpower to run it.
Yeah, we actually use that vehicle a lot right now, because that's actually what we use for our mud truck when we're doing water main breaks and stuff like that. So we're not dirtying up a nice looking truck, but you know, it's definitely had its use.
So we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Thank you.
We will. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments from the board? Seeing none, Megan, call the roll.
Trustee Lautner?
Yes.
Trustee Zora?
Yes.
Trustee Council?
Yes.
Yes.
Trustee Stewart?
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously, Mr. President.
Thank you, Megan.
That's all I have, Mr. President.
Thank you, Trustee Sheehan. Is the meeting over now or not?
Motion to adjourn?
Okay, moving on. Finance Committee, Trustee Lautner.
Thank you, Mr. President. So we are 1 month into the new fiscal year of 24-25. And so I have the report from the first month. Fiscal year to date, general fund revenue of $816,224 is at 7% of the annual budget and a little over $93,000 or 12.9% greater than last year. Good start. Property tax receipts are $20,848 greater than last year, which is still due to the previous timing issues with Cook County's tax extension and collection process. Other local taxes are lower by $16,687 or about 16.5% due to the timing of cable franchise fee payments. Intergovernmental receipts are up $39,116 or about 8.5% from last year. Sales tax and income tax continues to trend higher, while state use tax and personal property replacement tax are lower. Licenses and registration fees are essentially flat compared to the prior year. Our permit receipts are $13,000 or 33% higher than the prior year. Charges for services are $31,674 or 49.2% higher than last year, and that's due to ambulance service receipts. Fine revenue is a little over $9,000 or 65.8% lower than last year. And our miscellaneous revenue is at $13,778 or 40.7% greater than last year, and that's due to increased interest income. And total general fund expenditures of $940,823 are at 8.6% of the annual budget, and $350,293 or a little over 59% greater than last year so far. And this may included 3 payrolls versus 2 in the prior year. And at this point, after 1 month, all departments are within budget expectations. And that concludes the finance report for month 1 of 24-25 this evening.
Thank you, Trustee Lautner. Other reports? Village Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. President. I have no report this evening.
Our Village Treasurer?
No report this evening, Mr. President.
Village Engineer? Our Village Attorney?
No report, Mr. President.
And our Commercial Revitalization, Trustee Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. President. Property revitalization program. The village is now accepting applications for the new property revitalization program, which will assist property and business owners who aim to enhance the external appearance of their properties. In order to be eligible, the building must be used for commercial purposes and must be located within one of the village's TIF or business development districts. Please visit the village's website for more information. Branding and identity plan. The village board recently approved a proposal from Span Studio to assist with developing a branding and identity plan for the village. The first phase of the plan will include a public kickoff and community engagement survey this summer. Stay tuned for more information in our e-briefs, digital newsletter, and on Facebook for how you can get involved and share your valuable input. Commercial Revitalization Committee. Our next CRC meeting will take place on Tuesday, July 9th at 6 p.m. at Village Hall. Businesses and members of the public are invited to attend and provide input on how the village can best support new and existing business and enhance the commercial areas in Grange Park. I have one item up for discussion. As mentioned in the CRC briefing, we have a commercial revitalization program, and we have applications for Matone Restaurant on 9 East 31st Street and Postal 31 on 1017 East 31st Street. The purpose is to provide the village president and the board of trustees with 2 recommendations for the CRC committee. General background: at the May 14th, 2024 and June 11th, 2024 meetings, the CRC committee reviewed and recommended approval of 2 property revitalization program PRP grant requests. The first application is for Matone Restaurant, located on 9 East 31st Street, includes landscaping improvements in the front and rear of the property. The second application is for Postal 31, located on 1017 East 31st Street, and includes the installation of a new retractable awning and on the front facade of the building. Both projects are intended to enhance and beautify the 31st Street commercial corridor, and the committee was unanimous in its recommendation that the village board approve the applications. The summary of both grant requests are outlined below. Matone Restaurant, total project cost is $12,852. Reimbursement requests of $6,426. Postal 31 has a total project cost of $12,144. Reimbursement request of $6,072. This item is up for discussion and action. Do I read both concurrent or one at a time? Okay, separate. First motion to approve an ordinance approving the property revitalization grant agreement by and between the Village of LaGrange Park, Cook County, Illinois, and E&J Restaurant Group, Inc. That would be Matone Restaurant.
Second.
Motion second, discussion. Trustee Stewart?
Yes, this is, we've been encouraging the businesses to adopt this program and get involved, and having these 2 very popular restaurants come forward is exciting news for the village, so I'm in full support.
Thank you, Trustee Stewart. Trustee Sheehan?
Thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, I support this on both of them. There's been a question as far as the Matones. Are they still planning on doing that this summer, or is it going to be more toward fall to accommodate the planting?
I believe they intend to undertake the project this summer.
Thank you. That's all, Mr. President.
Any other comments? Seeing none, Megan, call the roll.
Trustee Lautner?
Yes.
Trustee Zara?
Yes.
Trustee Council?
Yes.
Trustee Sheehan?
Yes.
Trustee Stewart?
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously, Mr. President.
Thank you, Megan.
And second motion to approve an ordinance approving a property revitalization grant agreement by and between the Village of LaGrange Park, Cook County, Illinois, and JGK 31st Street Properties, LLC, which is Postal 31.
Second.
Motion second, discussion. Trustee Stewart?
Same as before, we're encouraging these businesses to come forward and take advantage of this program, so I fully support it.
Any comments from the board? Seeing none, Megan, call the roll.
Trustee Lautner?
Yes.
Trustee Zara?
Yes.
Trustee Council?
Yes.
Trustee Sheehan?
Yes.
Trustee Stewart?
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously, Mr. President.
Thank you, Megan.
And that concludes my report. We saw the presentation already, so we moved that up. So,
Thank you, Trustee Stewart. Motion to approve committee and collectors' reports as presented.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, I have two items. One item, I had the privilege this week of taking a course at Northern Illinois University. They have a civic leadership academy, and I'll pass this around for the board if anyone is interested. It consists of 5 classes, and then you get a certificate at the end. But the most important thing that I felt was that when I came on board 19 years ago here, there was talk within the village about the police and fire and all the professionals that had CE classes that they had to go to and maintain throughout the year for their profession. But there was nothing for the board or for staff that weren't involved in a professional organization. So this is one opportunity for us to further and better ourselves and to, we're all leaders in our community. We're all leaders in our home, so not only for professional but for personal gain. It's just to create a better leader so that we can lead other people to heights they've never seen before. So the book is yours. I encourage you to read it at night before you go to bed. But there's some interest. It's a book that the course that I took on Friday, it was a course that he had used as the conduit for the discussions. And Julia had been involved with this too, so she's aware of especially Posner. They're both excellent writers. They have excellent information on leadership. So I give it to you with mid-Christmas gift, mid-year Christmas. But just so that we could all reach other heights, and I know all of you are taking classes already, so this is just to augment your personal trajectory towards greatness, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. The other item I have is that we have 2 birthdays tomorrow. So I don't know if we go to work or stay home or what do we do, but there's 2 birthdays. Trustee Stewart and Trustee Sheehan have birthdays tomorrow. Happy birthday, you guys. Okay, public participation this hour, anything for the board? Okay, any new business from the board? Motion to move into closed session?
I submit a motion to move into closed session for the purpose of discussing the purchase or lease of real property for the use of the public body according to 5 ILCS 120/2C5, not to return to regular session until the next regularly scheduled meeting in this room on July 9th, 2024.
Have a second?
Second.
All's in second. Megan, call the roll.
Trustee Lautner? Yes. Trustee Zara?
Yes.
Trustee Council?
Yes.
Trustee Sheehan?
Yes.
Trustee Stewart?
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously, Mr.
Thank you,
President.
Megan. Meeting adjourned. We'll stay here and have everyone have a good week.